Welcome back. Smarter Markets is at FIA Boca, and I'm joined by Stuart Connolly, CEO of CloudMargin.
Hi.
It's great to have you back, Stuart.
Yeah, great to be back.
So what have you been working on at CloudMargin?
Gosh, what have we been working on at CloudMargin? It feels more than a year since I was here with what we've been up to. So look, I guess we're living in a pretty interesting time at the moment, right?
Pretty interesting few days.
With pretty high volatility. And what have we been working on over the last 12 months, even the last 24 months, and we'll continue to work on, right, is ensuring that we are building a platform that is, super scalable. So when you have real peaky, volatile times with lots and lots of margin and collateral calls, that the platform is, can scale and is stable. I can do all those things, right? We're very blessed in that we built a cloud native SaaS platform. So, with auto scaling, with all those great things that you get from modern technology. And we've been really focused on kind of the institutional grade of the platform, the flexibility that the platform can provide. So meaning that clients can think about what assets they want to be eligible, how they want to post them, in what size and scale they want to post them, so they can really manage their risk in a real-time way for thinking about things like optimizing their assets. And if we go back 5, 6, 7 years, certainly pre Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when we were living in a pretty stable zero rates environment, optimizing your collateral assets was kind of like, not that relevant. In today's world, it's extremely important. So the investment we're making around, really allowing clients to think about and have transparency of their assets in a real-time risk management way is really paying off. When we hit periods like this, that is when, our clients are quite thankful that we've made that investment and that they're on the platform and they can manage these things in a very, very controlled way.
And when you talk about the assets that they can use for collateral and margin, what types of assets are you talking about, and is that changing?
Yeah, so look, I think the majority is what you would expect for large institutions who are trading in the derivatives market. So from govy bonds, cash, all forms of cash, multi-currency cash. But going down into, depending on what sort of agreements, bespoke agreements they've got with their end clients, or the clients have with their dealers and liquidity providers. It can be things like equities. It can be some forms of commodities. Look, I guess one of the big themes that we're seeing here at this conference is tokenization. So tokenization of assets. So look, I think that's something that we will start to see move a little bit over the next 12 to 18 months. We're participating in a large industry, what they're calling a sandbox, what I call a proof of concept, which is tokenizing money market funds. So I guess in the future we'll expect to start seeing more expanded pools of liquidity and collateral being utilized. I think that's highly sensible for the industry to do that in a world where high quality assets are always constrained, and the utilization of them is kind of needed and required in lots of different places. Making more things eligible makes a whole heap of sense. But also, I've kind of watched this movie a few times of the industry wanting to adopt tokenization of assets. For example, like we've been on working groups for probably 6-7 years, and 6 or 7 years later, there is still no tokenization of traditional financial assets. Something feels a little bit different this time. It feels like there's a bit more momentum behind it. Feels like it might happen. But if we're sitting here in 12 months' time and it hasn't, I won't be hugely surprised, but I would be a bit disappointed.
And it's a very interesting contrast today, right? Because you have all the conversations about tokenization. At the same time, you've got an incredible stress test occurring, among other things, with the conflict in Iran, oil prices over 100, equity market selling off.
I thought I saw them hit 120 earlier.
Whoa. So as someone who kind of comes from, the more traditional margin collateral side, what would your advice be for the tokenization side? Like, what do they got to make sure they get right, and they might not be seeing around the corner?
Yeah, look, I think everything in financial markets usually kind of comes back to liquidity, right? So tokenizing something that doesn't have any kind of deep pool of liquidity behind it, doesn't seem like a very sensible thing to do unless the tokenizing of that asset is going to create a new pool of liquidity, and it will therefore become, a highly liquid asset, right? Because, the last thing people want to post up is very illiquid assets, because you will get a very severe haircut on those. And so the value of what you are posting is going to be discounted very, very heavily, which means you're essentially going to be over collateralizing, to a very great extent. So look, I think tokenizing very liquid things, as I said, I like what I'm seeing in this industry initiative at the moment, where they're talking about money market funds being tokenized, because money market funds are deeply liquid instruments, right? It's cash, and it's US Treasuries. It's very short term, so it's kind of a cash substitute. It's highly liquid, but today those funds and assets are locked up, and you are unable to rehypothecate and reuse those assets. So bringing those assets in gives you a whole new liquidity pool, to essentially use and pledge as collateral against all of your other activities. So for me, that makes a whole heap of sense. But I think, ultimately, looking at liquidity and liquidity behind them, what's it going to buy you by tokenizing those assets? I know there's a lot of talk of tokenizing US Treasuries. US Treasuries are super liquid. Like, they move around the market relatively frictionless. Bringing new assets into the collateral pools feels like it makes a whole heap of sense. In terms of all the rails, and the infrastructure this happens around, again, we've been talking about blockchain technology for, it feels like, forever. And we've never really found a great large-scale use case for it in financial services, it feels like, yet. So there's lots of pockets where it's been explored, but it hasn't really kind of landed and taken hold of anything in sort of, the deeply regulated part of financial services. So I don't think the rails will alter significantly, certainly to start with. And, you can tell by looking at me, I'm getting kind of old. I've been in this industry a long time. Our industry moves slowly, right? Financial services is a relatively slow moving industry when it comes to adopting new, bold technologies. And that's partly because, we operate in a world where there's lots of legacy infrastructure. But also it's a deeply regulated market, and you don't want to do something that is going to present any regulatory or outsized financial risks to your business. So I think I don't think we'll see anything accelerate out of the gate, but I do hope we start seeing some of this innovation stick.
So I guess I might characterize you as cautious but hopeful.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
And is there anything that you've heard so far from other participants at the conference that is a little bit different, that makes you think, gives you that little bit more hope of, oh, maybe we're approaching it differently this time, or not?
I think the fact I'm seeing and hearing more people speak about it in a more infused way than I have in the past, certainly things like tokenization, that makes me feel, as I said, we've been looking at this for 6 or 7 years. We were the first company to do a POC of a tokenized asset, and this was probably 5 years ago, and doing the full front to back and settlement of that tokenized asset with a company that no longer exists today. And the reason they don't exist today is not because they didn't have great product or great technology or great idea or great people. They had all of those things, but the market was not ready to coalesce around the tokenizing of assets. And so they could not hang on for as long as the market's taken to get here, right? But it does feel like this does have the momentum behind it. And I think there's enough people talking about it, and there's enough of the right people talking about it. So the asset holders, the people that own money market funds, the people that want to solve this problem and it will create a real tangible benefit to their business, they are thinking about it in a different way than they have historically, and the technologies come on that can help them support it. And there's also a decent amount of investment capital behind it to make it happen. So it feels like kind of the stars are aligning for it to happen. But as I say, we've been talking about it for a long time. I hope it happens. But let's see. Let's see. When it does happen, we're ready. That's what I can tell you is when it happens, we're ready to go.
Fantastic. And if you're looking ahead over the next year, are there certain signposts you'll be looking for that let you know, like, oh, it's happening, or oh, no?
Yeah, look, I think the first ones are so large scale proof of concepts run by the industry. Does that work? Is it successful? Have people been able to prove inside their own organizations that this thing can work, that they have the ability to integrate their technology stacks to do this in a scaled way? So, this US industry sandbox coming up, and apologies, I don't know the date, but it's in a few weeks or a couple of months. There's lots of market participants, participating in that. And so if that works and is successful, well, that's a tick box exercise. Okay, we've proved something. Now let's move to the next stage and the next stage. But again, for all of these things, like the capital that's been invested in it, like any, younger fintech as we were, 5 years ago when we were really trying to, prove ourselves and make a mark. To make a mark ultimately means that you need to start producing revenue, right? And not burning all your investor cash on a Hail Mary pass. And, if we can start seeing some of those organizations start to print real revenues because clients are utilizing this, then there'll be more capital investment and the snowball effect will start, right? And we'll have more positive momentum. Look, and I think that'll be a great thing because anything that encourages innovation is great in our industry. And there's also a whole bunch of really nice people, sitting in these organizations, working their hearts out. I was going to say something else then, to really push this forward, and and they stake a lot on it, and I hope for them that it's successful.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Oh, thank
Appreciate
you.
you making the time.
Yeah, pleasure.
Fantastic.